Welcome back to another episode of Coaches on Zoom Drinking Coffee. My name is Andrew Moss, and I'm really excited to have somebody that I've been following on LinkedIn for quite a while now, Teresa Quinlan, with me today. Teresa, great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Yeah, it's great to meet you. We were just talking before we started recording that we're only maybe 45 minutes to an hour and 45 minutes apart, depending on what time of the day you travel.
Right? Yes.
And in a post-COVID world, when the traffic resumes, it'll be a little busier. But so I've watched a lot of your content. You really do a great job of sharing you with the world through LinkedIn, and as I'm sure you've learned, it's a powerful vehicle to help people get to know you, right? To get to know your personality, to get to know what you're all about. So maybe you could share for anybody that hasn't met you a little bit about what kind of coaching you do and what you're trying to accomplish with your coaching career.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of just like anyone, what you see and what you allow people to know is kind of just that. Did you allow people to actually know you, or did you do 5 takes before you then edited it and then stuck it up and said, here, this is what I'm going to let you know about me? So, one of the things with building content, I think as a coach is so important is it's got to be one take. Like, just say what you need to say as if you're talking to someone. And that's how I build my video pieces is individuals in my circle, whether they were friends or family, have always been so generous in being able to provide me with feedback on what it is that I do for them, like why we're friends, why they come and ask me questions, why they stick around to listen for answers. And the more I paid attention to that, the more I realized that's a little bit of a superpower in that it feels awesome to be able to harness all of those internal talents and see other people really benefit from it. And so, choosing a career path within coaching sort of made sense. Now that's, an industry phrase we're going to stick on it, but for me, it means more than just coaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always say to people, coaching to me is a tool in the toolbox, right? It's, sometimes we're an advisor, sometimes we're a consultant, sometimes we're just a confidant that somebody needs to share things with, right? And
teacher, mentor. Yeah. Sometimes you're the mirror and going, I don't think you're looking. You need a deep toolkit, kind of just like in leadership. It's really the same thing. You have to be able to service the person in front of you, which means you need a lot of tools in your kit and know when to pull the right one out and use it.
Yeah. So I'm always curious because to be able to do that, and I certainly get that from watching and listening to you, that you've got this extensive toolkit and some really interesting ways of helping people solve the challenges they have. But to do that, we often have to be able to have done that for ourselves through some kind of process. So what's the sort of story of how you've gotten to this place of such sort of presence and powerfulness to help others? There was probably a bit of a journey to get there.
Oh, sure. Yes. In 1972 in Sudbury, Ontario. I don't think you have to go that far back. I was a little bit of a shit when I was a kid, meaning that I challenged. I liked to challenge. I liked to challenge rules. I liked to challenge being told how to do things. And that kind of depended a lot on who it was that was telling me, whether I respected them or not, whether I thought they had something to give or share or wisdom behind what they were giving or sharing, and whether it felt like it was coming from a place to help or a place to harm. So I think growing up that those nuances impacted how I sought out my own personal development. I had great coaches, great teachers growing up. And my mother was, I think, pivotal in being able to plant a button and push a button of being the best that you can be. The way she went about it wasn't superb,
Mhm.
but it had a silver lining to it. I didn't realize the silver lining until I was older. When I was younger, I sort of fought against it a little bit. A lot, let's be honest. Sometimes you can clash with a parent, and so you do more fighting than anything else, but then you get older and you suddenly realize, there was some good stuff in there. I just didn't see it when I was younger. I could see it now that I'm older.
Right, right.
So I had great teachers who were able to sort of notice things within me and draw those out and put in front of me opportunities to take advantage of those talents and interests. And then I had coaches who were willing to spend time with me and develop those talents. And I think I was just surrounded by so many people that were really willing to help. And I also think I've always been willing to ask for not just help, but so I can be a lone wolf more so than I am a good asker of help. And that lone wolf makes me a trailblazer. I like to do things different, new. I like to challenge and seek out, well, what's going to work for me? Because if I can flourish and figure that out, then it probably gives me skills and understanding of how to navigate through challenges that I can transfer onto other people. So when they ask me, like, how did you do that? I could share the story. To get to this place now in coaching where generally the coach is just a little further ahead of the curve than you might be.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the advantage of just space and perspective, right? Of being able to see things from a little bit different viewpoint than somebody who's right in the middle of it, right? It's interesting. You talk about being a maverick and sort of a trailblazer, and that certainly comes across in your personality. But I've got my own lived experience of trying to be that as well, and that you can also often have some casualties along the way, and sometimes it's you that's the casualty of people that are not willing and ready for the change to happen at the pace that you'd like to see it happen. And I spoke with a coach, Andrea Clow, last week, who talked about working in the underground, and her secret gift is to help people figure out how to navigate change in the underground to allow change to happen without it kind of butting heads with leadership. And so how have you kind of managed that in your career of running up against structure and governance and authority when you see it so clearly and others don't?
Sometimes not well. Just like anyone else. I went through those. Yeah, exactly. I went through those growing pains of, maybe that wasn't the best way to go about that. I saw it on their face. Probably should have paid attention to that more. As I matured and became much more wise, that's when the emotional intelligence really kicked in. And, maturity for me in that era of my EQ development started in my late 20s. And that's when I really got into a lot of leadership roles and really noticed the benefit. And one of my coaches in EQ early on had said to me, you could probably go about getting what you want, still getting what you want in a better way that doesn't leave this ripple impact behind you. I'm like, but the ripple isn't that big. That's how I was justifying it. And they're like, yeah, you don't need to have one at all.
Right.
Yeah, I guess that's a way of looking at it. I certainly don't need to have one at all. That push and pull of like, well, they could just change, can't they? You're like, it's a little bit easier to try not changing other people. Yeah, it turns out it's a heck of a lot easier to try to not change people and instead change your approach. Man, that was kind of like a brick upside the head when she said that to me. And it forever really changed the way that I approached going into, yes, I'll be the maverick or the trailblazer, but there's 50% of the people that can't come at this pace. And I need all of them to be ahead of me in order for us to do this. So what do I need to do to get them ahead of me?
Right.
How do I need to rally the troops? How do I need to, push all the buttons inside of them or get them to push their own buttons so that can happen?
Yeah. But I mean, having gone through that makes you now so much more empathetic and aware of what the people who are coming to you for help are going through, right? Because I don't know if you've noticed this, but I find myself constantly feeling like I'm looking in the mirror at the clients who come to me to say, wow, they're seeing something in me at some point in my journey that's resonating with where they're at right now. And that's why we're able to connect and serve each other. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, do you find it's really helpful sometimes to just share a story demonstration from your own past when you're coaching someone, saying, let me just show you what I used to do?
Yeah. The vulnerability for coaches to connect with clients is to me like paramount, I think. And, and it's, as you said off the top, it's the same as, the 5-take video or the Teresa just rolled out of bed video. It's the same when we're coaching, right? Like if you aren't willing to share that this has been a process for you to get to this point, and therefore you can maybe shorten that process for them or guide them on a better way because you've been through it. Super valuable in terms of building connection. Yeah. What was?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Relationships are one of the pivotal points, not just in coaching, but in anyone's evolution, is the relationships they maintain around them have such a contribution to their capacity to move forward, to stay stuck, or to be sliding backwards.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what would sort of a typical client look like for you, if there is such a thing?
Yeah, there isn't. And it's funny because when I started my business, I reached out to as many people as possible that were already entrepreneurs to have them share how did they become it and all their nuggets so that I can pick what's going to resonate with me. And man, people are so generous and willing to share. And this one gentleman straight out of the gates asked me, who's your avatar? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Your ideal client. I'm like, well, but EQ has this broad spectrum that it can apply to really anything. Why would I want to limit myself like that, or limit myself so when people come to me and ask me for help, I say, I'm sorry, you're not my ideal client. Like, to me, that was just sort of cutting people off at their knees. So I've left it open that when people come to me and say, I've seen a video of yours, I've been listening to many videos of yours, I've been following you for 6 months, whatever it may happen to be, until they find their sort of courage moment to reach out and go, I would like to work with you.
Yeah.
That by not saying this is the pigeonhole you need to fit into, I get the opportunity to say yes to anyone who comes to me.
Yeah. And I think that's the sort of the hidden value in putting this authentic content out, is that by default, you're kind of separating the group into sort of the hell yes and hell no group of people, right? Like some people are going to love you and and some people are going to go and find somebody else. And that's good because it means that there's initially going to be an immediate connection typically, right? Yeah. And I think, part of the reason I even started the show was I get asked, and I'm sure you get asked by new coaches or coaches that are maybe struggling to build their coaching practice, like, how do I get clients? How do I get known? And part of it is to stop doing all the fake social media and all the other stuff and just put yourself out there and be okay with 90% of people walking by you and saying, not for me, and that perfect 10% showing up at your door front,
Yeah. Like, that's hammer, nail, perfectly harmonized. Is, for me, it's really the client chooses you. Yes, there is an element within, sometimes the coach has to also choose the client, but that's a little too egotistical for me in my approach. That makes it too much about me than anything else. If someone is not ready to work on their emotional intelligence, they don't seek me out in the first place, because it's very clear what I'm coaching on. And also that I do it a lot within the realm of leadership and organizational. I've had individuals say, do you also do personal development EQ? Yes, absolutely can do that. So I certainly don't limit, but because this is where I get to pull on all of my talents and expertise is in the leadership world, that's generally most of my clients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we're sitting in this very strange time in history right now, where emotional intelligence and coping skills are probably the most important thing. And we're starting to see we saw some terrible news yesterday out of Nova Scotia around, also what we have to be super aware of is that people are going to be struggling and dealing with things with a different amount of skills to deal with it, right? So has your the way you're serving your clients changed during this last couple months, and are the things that they're seeking help with changing, or like how are you adjusting?
Not too much difference, because my two primary clients, one was local, so I was going to see them. And then the other is not local. So we were virtually coaching anyways, just like this. And so the local one, we sort of tied all the loose ends, and now they're just going to hold until their sort of business returns to normal for us to pick up what would have been stage 2.
Right.
And the other business that's virtual, we're just business as usual, basically, with them. So not too much of a difference, really. What I am finding, of course, is different is there are, organizations across the planet that are sort of, I think now I'm seeing they're starting to come out the other end of that depressive mode of, I'm not really sure what we should do because I'm not really sure how long this is going to last. And usually once you get out of the first couple 2 to 3 weeks and go, oh, okay, this is how it's going to be for a little while, then the decision-making process becomes a little bit easier, because you're not emotionally in this limbo between I'm certain, I'm uncertain, I'm anxious, I'm no longer anxious.
Right.
So now that I'm seeing people pull out of that, more people are reaching out and not wanting to have that discovery process of, oh, we need webinars, we need leadership training, we need this in this sort of framework of reality. Yeah. How about you? Are you noticing similar?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I have my clients, I have a couple of key core clients, which are actually universities. So I work with Queen's University with their School of Business, and I coach a couple of them, the master's degree programs. And so, a sort of a 25 to 40-year-old demographic, taking this sort of advanced degree with hopes of career advancement or career change. And so it's a lot of uncertainty filtering into this group. And we have quite a few international students that are hoping to land in Canada and to sort of set up their lives here as well. And a lot of change for them. So it's actually been about kind of even going deeper with them on ways to support them way beyond what the academic program was supposed to be offering. I must say, to give Queen's credit, they actually offer one-on-one personal coaching during these programs, which in itself is amazing. And they've kind of said to me, look, do whatever you need to do for each student, right? And spend as much time and go as deep. And so we've done some things. I've created a program that's trying to connect students with small businesses who are struggling. So we're trying to create some work experiences, if not paid, at least applied work experiences, so that the students get something to focus on and the businesses get some support, which they desperately need right now. And that project really came out of, what do these students need right now? And what they needed was a sense of purpose and focus, and a feeling of hope that if they did something, it could lead to something in the future. And then I have quite a few small business clients as well who are like, I don't even know what to do right now. So connecting them has proven to be really powerful thing. It's kind of taken off on me. It's become sort of a side business of a platform that's connecting. I think we've got almost 200 students now and about 50 or 60 businesses. So it's becoming sort of a national effort, but it all came from, how do I serve who I already work with even deeper? And I'm sure you've seen, there's a lot of people doing there's a lot of noise online of free programs and group programs. And I appreciate everybody's trying to find ways to serve, but it just felt like I just needed to go deeper with those that I already work with. And then this show came about because I just felt like I also wanted to connect and have as many conversations with other coaches, to both to learn and to support and to find ways to help get their message out to an audience.
Well, topic wise, I found that most of my clients right now was one-to-one, and they're in the executive roles. And so they've had to do things like layoffs and very difficult decision making. And one of the stellar things is that most of them had already been 4 to 6 weeks into their EQ coaching development experience. And then initial stage is 8 weeks, 1-to-1. And what I found for the majority of them is because the first things we generally work on is emotional self-awareness and stress management. When the bulk of this hit, they were prepared to emotionally manage it much more successfully. So they've come through the last 3 to 4 weeks in better shape with greater levels of well-being and happiness than they would have if this would have happened before we started.
Right.
And they're acknowledging that even when they took their initial EQ profiling survey, and they've actually done a second one about 8 weeks afterwards, their well-being and happiness is elevated even in the thick of this, which is really fantastic because that allows them to access the logical centers of their brain much more effectively for the decision making. Like the chips are down. It's really hard to make decisions that you feel good about right now. And that's what I'm recognizing is this stuff works. Not that I needed extra proof, but it's kind of nice that they get it, that they get the proof.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've heard it said, and I totally agree that this circumstances like this, as much as there's no playbook for it, it clearly does is magnify what already was there. Right. And so insecurities get magnified, strengths get magnified. Right. And so, I reflect a lot, even for myself, of the things that I'm feeling uncertain about it's a great signal that I need to do more time investing in preparedness in those areas in the future, because this is a great test. As much as, the horrible outcomes, all over the place, but as a personal challenge, it's a great reflection of how well we've prepared ourselves with the personal skills, whether it's, we have enough money set aside, have we built up a clientele that we can reach out to, do we have a support network, and so it's like doubling down on those things that you feel a little bit queasy about, day to day, has been a big reflection for me going through this.
Yeah. It's like it puts a magnifying glass or like a microscopic 4 times resolution on self-care versus self-soothing techniques. And if you can have that aha moment of, oh my goodness, most of what I've been doing has been self-soothing. And now I'm realizing all of these self-care things, especially I notice more around people who heavily identify as extrovert. They're really struggling right now because they're so isolated from how they recharge, which is a straight up self-care strategy that they may not have been aware was so important to their overall sense of well-being. Right. And when you can't have it, you're like handcuffed, you can't have it. Yeah. You have to be insanely creative and really sort of have exceptional hygiene around other self-care strategies. Otherwise, it gets very easy to embark on self-soothing elements right now, which are catastrophic to performance. Like you're scrolling social media more often. Maybe you're turning more to things like extra eating or alcohol or
bottles of wine.
Some of those addiction things that you just think can be really detrimental. So those kinds of things can really be highlighted right now as well for people.
Yeah, totally. I also see the difference between sort of those that maybe approach life and career with self-interest leading service, the struggle of self-interest all of a sudden when everything disappears is a hard thing to pivot from. Doing what we do day to day, I get asked, how am I doing? And generally I feel like I'm doing pretty well. I feel like, I'm contributing value. There's people that seek help on a regular basis. Maybe the business cycles have changed a little bit, but so what, right? In the sense of like, we're doing what our gifts are, and we're getting to serve people. And it seems like there's nothing really better to be able to do at this time.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. It's great. So what's the next, ideally, sort of where's the future of Teresa Quinlan coaching going out of all of this and into the future?
I was actually giving more and more thought to a couple of passion projects that I've got on my list. I want to dedicate some additional time to it. There's emotional intelligence is one of these things that we look at right now. It's gaining this momentum as the top 5 things people are looking for when they're hiring. And you just think, yes, but you haven't even shifted the hiring process. And recruiters aren't skilled yet to look for it. Like, how do you look for EQ? Are you profiling for EQ? So that element has a big gap for organizations. They got to close that gap. If it's this important, you got to know how to look for it.
Yeah.
So that's a good gap to close. The other thing is we want to hire people who are emotionally intelligent, but when are we teaching them how to be emotionally intelligent?
Right.
And our school doesn't have this as part of their curriculum. So for me, a passion project is to get it into the hands of when our brains shift at 7, 14, 21. So just before 6, 13, 20 would be most ideal for EQ development and learning to be part of our school curriculum.
Love it. Boy, we'll keep this conversation going offline because I think there's some synergy around that as well, around projects that I've got going on. So that's very cool. So more at a macro level of trying to infiltrate the systems of child development and young adult development makes total sense. I honestly, like, without throwing any of my students under the bus, I see the outcome of that not being part of the academic programming when you get 25 to 35-year-olds that really are struggling with the coping skills of how to deal with this kind of a circumstance. Not that this would be normal, but even with uncertainty and with change and things that are going to become part of everyday life for the rest of their lives. Somehow, whether it's the way parenting's been done or the way the school system operates, those coping skills have kind of been left behind, it seems.
Use of technology and the impact of technology right in our hands. Like, it's scary, really kind of scary statistics with lots of variables contributing. But just to even note that 10 years ago, the average age for diagnosis of depression was 27.5 years old. It is now 14.5 years old. The average age of diagnosis in depression. Like, it's mind boggling. And when you and I have gifts and talents to be able to impact that, yeah, we need to impact that.
Absolutely. Well, that seems like a great place to wrap up, because I think that is an ambition to make that kind of impact that we actually have a lot of shared interest in. And I think there'll be a way that we can support each other on that. And beyond that, I'm thrilled to be able to get your message out to an audience beyond the one you already have, because I think you have so much value to offer people. And as much as it is at this time, but at any time of how do we teach emotional intelligence? How do we actually acknowledge and reward and support people that have it, progressing into roles where they can lead other people? And how do we change the way that we hire people to do that better? What does leadership mean around emotional intelligence? It's such an important topic. So thrilled to be able to share it with the world a little bit more.
Thank you for having me. This is lovely. I'm like pumped up. I've got a jolt of energy to find this synergy between the work that we're doing. Because I know this is not a trailblazing one that is a solo activity.
No, well, I can tell you that the advanced education institutions that I work with are acknowledging, they're seeing the results of it not having been done. So I think that part of the opportunity is to actually partner with universities and colleges and to actually build curriculums and then offer them into the elementary and high school systems in new ways. But I also think it needs to be built into the teacher training programs across the country, right? So there's a lot that I've got my fingers tapped into that I think we could do together. So that would be exciting.
Beautiful. More than just coffee.
Yes, more than just coffee. So thank you very much, Teresa. It's been great to get to know you personally a little bit better. And I have a feeling this will not be the last conversation. Yeah.
Good. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andrew.
Right. You're welcome. Take care. Be safe, and all the best to you.
You too. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.